Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Major development on the Pred situation when Nadeshot giving his perspective on exactly what's been going on behind the scenes over the last few days, suggesting that if Nade or another team was looking to sign Pred again after all this drama that's happened over the last few days, he would need more transparency from Pred on exactly why OpTic have cut ties in the manner that they have. Nadeshot says, look, Hex would not have wronged Pred in any way in this regard, and to be fair, that's similar to what Pred said in his story that we saw just yesterday, but it still doesn't exactly explain why this situation has transpired as it has done. What's Pred's next steps in terms of getting back into the CDL? Which teams might be interested? Very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, your Challenger Cup number 3 champions. This of course used to be Hook's roster, but now aBeZy is there instead. Spart, aBeZy, Prolute and Capsidol, they won it in North America. Illy's team was forfeited unfortunately early on. I think the funny thing was the team they got forfeited against told them, oh don't worry guys, we're gonna go and win it for you type thing, and then they got slammed the next round. So yeah, those guys won. In Europe again, Afro's team takes the win. Now this is pretty interesting. I know that Afro's been talking about how he thinks this is like his best game in a long time. We know that he said after a difficult season on the Los Angeles Thieves last year that, you know, he's going to cut out all the distractions, basically go 100% into COD again, and we know how good this guy can be on his day. I've gassed him up before. I think that gas has been valid, but, you know, I'm not going to deny and say that he hasn't under-delivered over the last couple of seasons. I do think, though, if there's any player in Europe right now I'm looking at, especially from an SMG side, Afro would be a guy to look for when these teams start to struggle in the CDL, as to be fair, some of them are. Shout out Shox, Fighter Crimson and Setzy, by the way, once again just raking in the free cash in the APAC region. And the same story for the Latin American boys that got the victory again. It is, you know, sad really for APAC that they had Pred, right? Pred, after getting scouted from that region, was dominating gear and challengers for a couple of years. There were lots of players and, you know, pundits and fans in North America were like, oh, this guy's, you know, beating up on a Farmers League. He's not going to be that good when it comes to the CDL. Comes in, MVP caliber player, wins the World Championship, and it was all looking so rosy until basically a week ago today when some of these rumors started to emerge. Marky V, by the way, he's out there. He's got his visa approved to go to the US, so of course he's on the Gentlemate coaching staff. That could be a positive for them. They've started 0-4. I know that Drill came out and said, look, I take responsibility for the bad performances so far, and of course the viewership, they've been crushing it, but not exactly in terms of results. There was also this spotted yesterday, not exactly sure why, but Monster Energy used to be a CDL partner, and it seems like before the matches started on the Sunday, they were removed as a COD sponsor, so not exactly sure whether there's somebody else coming in instead, why this partnership has ended now rather than at the end of the calendar year that you might expect, whether this partnership ended months ago and they just forgot to take it off the website. I don't really know the answer, but still kind of a big deal for competitive COD. But let's talk about Pred, right? Because, man, this situation continues to deliver. It is not just the story of the year in competitive Call of Duty esports, but honestly, in esports in general, this has been completely blowing up. So Pred did yesterday take OpTic out of his name and bio, so it's no longer OpTic Pred, it's no longer a professional COD player for, you know, ... Okay, still Dallas, Texas, but we know that he's back in Australia for the time being. Now, just after I recorded yesterday's video, he put this tweet out there, right, saying, saying the following: I appreciate the support and love everyone's shown me. Words can't explain how much it all means. As you guys are now aware, after what he said on stream yesterday, as we looked at, of the situation I'm currently dealing with, I'll be stepping away and handling my personal issues to fix my mental health. Go cheer the boys on. I'll be rooting for them. Minor setback for a major comeback. So it was great to hear from Pred, I thought, first of all, just to suggest that, you know, he's still looking to compete. It's not like it's completely chalked. He wants to come back. Now, Nadeshot's opinion is that, look, if he wants to come back, you've got to tell us a bit more about, you know, what's been happening, why OpTic have cut ties in this way, and, you know, we'll see those statements in a second, and we'll discuss them in a bit of detail. I will say what's interesting about this tweet is that, you know, we've seen players in the past struggling with various issues, family, staff, personal things, even just retiring from professional play, or even retiring to some challengers play. There's been some notable players over the last few years that have never really made it into the CDL. They'll put out a tweet saying, look, I'm done with this, guys. I've got to move on to a new chapter of my life. And you've got, you know, 50, 100 pro players, community members in the replies saying, you know, thanks for your time, great crew and all this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that people haven't reached out to Pred in private. I'm sure that they have. But obviously the question would be, why do they need to reach out to Pred in private and not reply to his tweet? Because if you look at the replies to the tweet, like there aren't, you know, his teammates aren't here, right? This is the point that people are putting across, is that there's great guys in here, obviously Ronnie, Drippy, and among many others. Obviously Puckett's here as well, saying time to get the mind right. But, you know, unless I'm just missing something, no pro player is in the replies here, like, at all. I mean, which would be surprising. Now, I know that he did tweet this at an hour where most of the COD pros would be asleep. So I thought, all right, let me just give this a little bit of time to see if anyone actually does reply. But there's so many replies to this tweet, I don't think any of them is from a pro. And it does make you think, right, exactly why this is, especially if, you know, what Pred said on stream, that the boys, you know, he's still boys with those guys, Hicksy still boys with Hex, and there's no kind of issues there. Makes me wonder why they can't say anything. I think that's the key question to me. And we'll discuss maybe what this could have been and some other speculation on it in a second, but that's still the piece that doesn't fully add up to me, is that, you know, why can't anybody seem to say anything publicly? And look, Scrap was on stream with him vibing last night. Like, he's obviously got some support from the pro players, but just the fact that there was, like, no OpTic, like, no one, right? I mean, Pred's won the world championship for these guys just a couple of months ago, and yet no one could say anything about, like, you know, thanks for your time with the team, wishing you the best, like, nothing like that. Makes it, well, it's surprising, I think, to say the very least on the matter. And therefore, people have been wondering, because with what Pred said on stream, he effectively said, look, OpTic tried to help me, I didn't want the help, and, you know, now I'm gone from the team, effectively. You can read it one of two ways. Either OpTic just looks like a bad organization, just straight up, right? Because if Pred's dealing with these, you know, mental health difficulties and he needs time and space to work through it, it obviously looks pretty bad on OpTic that they've just cut ties and won't say anything. Now, look, part of the reason for cutting ties might be monetary. We know that they don't have infinite money around. They've got to pay Hook some sort of a salary to obviously play for them, and we know that, you know, they had the salary cuts and all this, so it's not like them getting rid of Pred doesn't make some sense from like a financial point of view for them to terminate the contract, but it's just not, the saying nothing is why there's questions on this, especially because, as Trey says, back in the day when he was on Red Reserve, Hex was, you know, the guy to reach out to them and say, look, do you guys need any help with this, that, and the other? And that's the same thing that Nadeshot says on stream yesterday that I'll share for you guys, basically saying, look, Hex definitely hasn't screwed this guy over. That's not how Hex is. We know what happened with Maniac back in the day. Hex as an owner, especially someone that's achieved so much for the organization, would, you'd imagine, be very committed to helping that player as much as possible. Pred implied that Hex had tried to help and his help had been refused or whatever, but it still doesn't quite explain why there's no words on any of this publicly.
I can pretty much guarantee that after you win a world championship coming into the next year, you're not going out of your way to drop somebody because they're not feeling like themselves right now. Okay? So I got to shut that down immediately. Anybody saying that Hector and OpTic and Scump don't care about their players and don't care about their teammates and don't care about their friends that are a part of the organization, I mean, you are huffing so much glue that we might need to call the local authorities and get a wellness check on you, brother. You're out of your mind. Okay. We obviously did not get much out of that. You know, I agree with Pred. I agree with Pred that he doesn't really owe anybody an explanation, doesn't really owe anybody any more insight than he chooses to share as to why there's been a team change. I think, for me personally, without really knowing what's going on, I don't know. If I'm Pred, it's hard to say. I mean, look, bro, if somebody says they're going through some tough shit mentally, you know, you can't really pry or press them too much. But if I'm putting myself in Pred's shoes from a career perspective and I plan to come back, I plan to compete again, I plan to try to get back into the league whenever I get my shit taken care of or get my mind right, I think there's always going to be a lot of questions circulating what transpired for them to make such an aggressive change to the roster to move away from him as a player after winning a world championship. It's like when I look at Pred over the offseason, one of the running jokes was that he went on like a couple month long vacation and they had a lot of time off before the season started. You know, that's usually the time that you use to decompress, get right, get everything squared away so you put your head down and work. But I'm not sure. I don't know how this is going to shake out. You know, I think Pred is an incredibly talented player. I don't know him that well personally, but I think with what he's done in competitive Call of Duty, he deserves to compete again. But I think it's going to have to come with a little bit more transparency. And if I'm ownership for another team, or if I'm working as a GM or a coach, I would want to know more, personally speaking. But, you know, you definitely can't you can't take value away from working on your mental health, I suppose. I don't know. It feels like there's more to the story, but it's really up to Pred's discretion on what he wants to share, what he doesn't want to share.
So I thought what Nadeshot said was quite fascinating in terms of if we try and read between the lines a little bit there, because, you know, we might expect that Nadeshot knows a bit more about this story than the rest of us do. He's obviously boys with Hex and Scump, and the way that he talks about the Pred situation kind of leads me to believe that maybe Nadeshot knows a little bit more than he's letting on, I guess I would say. And I was interested by his response because, you know, he's quite clear to say, look, all the words that Pred said that we talked about yesterday didn't really give any more context to the big questions as to why OpTic have handled this situation in the way that they have. And look, as I said earlier, it either looks like OpTic are a bad org, or it looks like Pred isn't telling the full story on the matter, right? I think that's, you know, there's only one of two conclusions there, at least in this specific case. It's tough to read into it another way right now. So that's what Nadeshot says. Look, if I was a team looking to pick Pred back up, he needs a bit more transparency on what's happened, you know, how it's come to this point effectively. And I think, you know, after a week of all this drama happening, we can make some further assumptions on what might have gone down here. I think one of the key things to recognize is that team environment behind the scenes was not a team that was going to win a tournament. I think that's the thing that people might be missing here right now, is that the issues that Pred was dealing with behind the scenes were affecting their performance in the server and affecting their team chemistry. I'm 99% sure that this is true. Shotzzy, he's pretty honest and open in general, but Shotzzy made some comments after the weekends they played, the opening weekend with Pred, where he said their practice hasn't been good. If we were going to go to a tourney right now, there's no way we're going to win. And the boys have been full of praise for Hook since he has joined the roster instead. So I'm pretty much convinced that whatever was happening with Pred, obviously we've talked about the gambling problems that seem to, at least, you know, there's definitely rumours that that has at least part of the truth here. They were affecting Pred's ability to be the best teammate in person. And he pretty much said this on his stream as well. So I do think you've got to consider that that is part of the reason why OpTic have made this change, is purely performance-based. It wasn't looking good with Pred. But, of course, you then still got to wonder, well, why have they cut all ties in the manner that they have? Is it sponsorship related? Do they have other obligations that you know, they don't want to discuss because the situation with Pred is quite controversial and difficult to handle from their side? Maybe. Is there other talk about it as well in terms of like an event that changed the timeline? Because the event that I talked about at the start of the video, this on December the 11th, Pred was streaming ranked player. It seemed like everything was okay. And again, there was some potentially baseless speculation going around yesterday, but it's like, because OpTic haven't said anything and Pred hasn't, at least in Nadeshot's perspective, given full transparency here, then people are speculating stuff like this, that Pred was around Shotzzy's house. I didn't see these clips. I can't verify if this, you know, there's any truth behind this. But look, you guys can feel free to read through this comment and make your own judgment on whether something specific happens between Pred and Shotzzy that kind of, you know, basically flipped the book and said, all right, we're not going to be dealing with this situation any longer, and kind of broke that trust. I mean, that's all I can imagine for Hex and OpTic not to say anything, because if you're part of that like family and you respect those relationships, then, you know, you'd expect them to treat you likewise. That's not what's happened here, right? So, look, that's the Pred situation as we currently understand it. There is more to the story, of course. Maybe we'll find out in due course. The other question is, where does Pred go, if anywhere? Nadeshot doesn't reckon that he's going anywhere anytime soon until he says more transparency on the situation. That was Nadeshot's implications. But still, Pred says he's a free agent. He's no longer an OpTic. You know, he might come back to OpTic if they suck with Hook and Pred can mend those relationships. I don't know. Maybe he comes back to OpTic. I just think it's particularly unlikely. Cloud9, they might be an option. He's boys with some of those guys. I wouldn't rule that out entirely. FaZe seems a bit of a stretch. People saying Los Angeles Thieves seems, well, a massive stretch to me right now. Look, people would argue, oh, Pred maybe has a higher ceiling than Envoy, but I don't think that says the full picture of what Envoy does to that team. And equally, Nadeshot, given what he said about Pred, I don't think he's trying to drop Envoy for Pred anytime soon. But very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.